What does her anus have to do with the trees? Hi YouTube, this is Courtney. I hope that you're enjoying your day and that the weather is nice where you're at. Where I'm at, it's nice and sunny. The weather's been heating up lately, which I very much enjoy because I love warm weather. And I started thinking about how fortunate and blessed we are to be able to go outside and take nice long walks and, just enjoy Mother Nature. And then I ran across this book. It's called Clean Air by Sarah Blayk. It's a post-apocalyptic murder mystery novel in which the air is unbreathable. So I figured that I'd share it with you. Now I do need to take off some fingernail polish because I've been very busy lately. So I figured in honor of this novel, I would do something to kind of match it. So I'm going to do black with some sparkles to represent the pollen. Now in this novel, it's set in 2042, which is 10 years after the turning. Now the turning is an event in which the trees turned toxic and started producing this toxic pollen. So if you go out and breathe it, then it messes with your respiratory system and you die. Somewhat to coronavirus, but not quite. So the people basically spend all their time indoors now. If people are outside, they have to wear masks and they can only go out for a short amount of time. Probably anything more than a minute is going to mess with their respiratory system and they have to go to the hospital and potentially die. Now this is set in the future times, so you have self-driving cars, you have lack of privacy. People stay in plastic homes. Homes are definitely much smaller in size than they used to be. So definitely different than the world that we currently live in. In this novel, you have Isabel. She has a husband and she has a little daughter. She's 4 named Cammie. And Cammie starts talking in her sleep. She seems like she's talking to someone and then she starts detailing about all these murders that start happening. Now, there hasn't been a murder in this time frame in about 10 years, which is pretty interesting that you have lack of crime. First, they brush it off, but then they realize that it has something to do with Isabel. So pretty much they get with the cops and some psychic mediums and try to figure out what's going on and who this killer is. So that's pretty much the novel there. Now, I thought that this novel was a very interesting take on the whole post-apocalyptic theme. We're used to the sea level rising, maybe aliens come over and invade the world. We're used to seeing climate change in which we go into this frozen tundra, maybe a volcano spews lava and then all of a sudden everybody's killed. Robots destroy the earth because we let them take over technology. So I thought that this was a very interesting take in that you have basically the trees start killing people. The trees kind of bend to our will. We've been chopping them down for years with deforestation, and it's like the trees are fighting back. So I feel like that's an interesting take on post-apocalypse because you don't normally think of the trees as producing something deadly. It actually reminds me of that movie with Mark Wahlberg where the trees start producing some sort of invisible toxin and then people start dying. I forgot the name of it. So this is a new world in which people have to adapt to it. And as people, we're always constantly adapting to whole new things. However, this is interesting because you can't go outside. So what do you do if you can't breathe outside? So they have to figure out a whole new way of doing things. Part of that is that they get these robots that are doing all the farming for them. So pretty much anything outside, they have a robot that's doing for them. So where are jobs? Where are people getting money from? So I thought it was just a very different take on how people live their life and how they need to adapt. And this is one of those cases where technology actually advances us forward and makes up for what it is that we're lacking. There's this theme of isolation. So people can't go outside, they're not as social. So where do you go? Where do you meet people at? If half the world's population is dead, then you have to form new friendships. I also think the idea of plastic homes is a very unique concept. I've never seen that in a book before. So you have these plastic homes that everyone lives in and there's no privacy. For one, they're little almost cubicles, so you have no privacy from the people around you as well, like outside of your home, as well as those inside of your home. In this new world, people have to adapt and live a different life. We're used to going out, driving, going to where we need to go, going to the pools outside, going to the beach, taking a picnic, sitting outside. And you can't do that in this new world. So the idea that everything needs to be brought indoors and make that just as satisfying as if you were outdoors is definitely a unique challenge. And I thought about that. Like, how would I fare in a situation like that? And as someone that really loves the outdoors, I wouldn't adapt that well to it. But you have no choice if you can't breathe. So I think that the way that the characters and that the world adapted to that situation, I think is very unique. Now, whether it's satisfying or not, I think is something to be determined. However, you really have no choice. It's not like you have the option, like these days with coronavirus, of I want to wear a mask or I don't want to wear a mask, and you have that option. Here you have no choice but to wear a mask and stay indoors. Otherwise, you're not going to survive. This black fingernail polish I had on here before is not coming off very easily, that's for sure. I also thought that the theme of family being important and at the center of your world, especially when everything else is crumbling around you, I think is very interesting, because we all make sacrifices for family. However, when you have a child, I think that that is more paramount than anyone else. So I think the fact that Isabel utilizes all her strength to make sure that she protects her family despite herself shows her love and dedication for her family, which I think is definitely important. Another thing that I thought was interesting is the idea of grief. Not to give too much away, but Isabel lost her mother a long time ago, and she's just not over it. And that's a hard thing, I think, for anybody who's ever lost a loved one, especially a parent. That's your rock. That's the person you've always depended on your entire life. My mom, fortunately, is still alive, and, it makes me sad to think that there will be a world one day where I don't have her. However, Isabel lost her mom prematurely, and it's something that I think stays with her even 10 years from the date that it happened. I think that the fact that she carries that burden of missing her mom and her mom not being there, I think is also what makes her even more dedicated to her family and to that concept of family. Okay, on to the polish. So I think that the idea of grief and how long you should grieve for family members is definitely relative. I think that there's no time limit when it comes to grief. I think that everyone shows that in different ways as well. So I think that as long as you're not in a standstill with living your life while you're grieving, I think there's nothing wrong with taking, whether it's a year or whether it's 10 years. Also, as long as that doesn't come out in a negative way, then I think that's also okay as well. I also think that this is a book about finding where your place in life when you feel like you're lost and don't know what to do. I think there's nothing wrong with sometimes taking a step back and figuring out where I need to go. And I think maybe with the main character, it took her a longer period of time than maybe others may think it would. However, she needed her own time frame to be able to find what her purpose in life. And I like the fact that she eventually did find that. I like the fact that the book discussed not running away from your problems and addressing them head on. This book has a lot of psychic, median type interaction, which I think is interesting in a book. I also think it's interesting when cops take the time to utilize that, because that, if you want to call it a science, some people don't believe in that. And a lot of times when you have that supernatural intervention to be able to tell the future, I think turns people off. I don't think that that's something to turn away from this book from, but I do think that it's interesting that it was incorporated into it and that it was able to be used for something good and not something bad. I think this book had some unique humor to it. I wouldn't call it hilarious, but there are definitely some parts that you'll be like, okay, especially with the detective. It's a very quirky detective that I think, is a unique taste. Let's just say that. Overall, I thought this was a good book to read. I thought the author did a really great job of creating a world that's definitely unlike our own. I hope it never comes to that in our own world. So I really think that when it comes to me sometimes feeling down about having to wear a mask when I go out and maybe not being able to go to restaurants and things like that, I can put it into perspective that at least I can breathe when I go out. I don't always have to wear a mask. So I think that whenever you think that the world's gotten you down and that coronavirus is taking over and that you can't get away from it, I would just encourage you to breathe it in. Hey, I didn't wear this shirt for nothing, but I think it's a good book, Clean Air with Sarah Blayk. I think you should definitely check it out. Okay, I did manage to get this black fingernail polish on off camera. So the next book I wanted to discuss with you, it's not in the same category of a post-apocalyptic novel. It's actually a children's book, but I happened to run across it and I thought it was a very interesting book. I plan to actually gift it to one of my nieces, but I thought it was very pretty. It's called The Last Tree. It's not actually made of paper. It says it's waterproof, tear resistant, produced without water, without trees, without bleach, and saves 50% of energy compared to normal paper. That is really unique for me. I've never seen a book quite like this, but it has very vibrant colors. It's huge. It has all these pretty illustrations. I don't know if you can see that. Sorry. Pretty illustrations. It's really good. Basically, it talks about the trees have decided to leave, and a little boy comes out and sees this and he's devastated because he says he really likes the trees. He thinks they're beautiful and he enjoys playing with them. And then the last tree decides to leave and he says, please don't leave, please don't leave. Why are you leaving? The tree states, I prefer to leave by my own roots before I get burnt to ash and cut into 1,000 pieces. So basically the trees are tired of being cut down with all the deforestation. So the little boy convinces the tree to stay and says, you know, give it one more year. And in the meantime, the little boy and all his friends plant new trees. So when the tree wakes up, it sees that it's surrounded by all these other trees with beautiful butterflies and animals and decides that it's going to stay. So it's a very beautiful story. I think that it's great to read to kids at a younger age so that they can start understanding the effects of deforestation and taking care of the environment around them. So overall, I think it's a beautiful book. I think it was illustrated very, very well. And like I said, the whole concept of not being made with paper and preserving the trees while talking about the trees being unhappy, I think is very good. So that's it for me. I have two really great books, opposite ends of the spectrum, but still equally nice. I am going to finish my nails off camera and then I'll let you see how they turn out. Finished my nails. I think they look more like a starry night than anything, but you know, supposed to represent pollen. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope you come back. Bye. Have a great day.